Hey,
Mike.
Anyway, are we cool for UAS stuff?
UAS finished like an hour ago.
What?
You guys missed it.
Oh,
Mike, I know you've been holding off for the past year. It's always been too mainstream for you. You finally agreed. You can't go and do this to us.
Before it's cool is bad enough. Now you're doing things before you say you're going to do them.
And you can't say something starts at 6 o'clock and start at 4:30.
And what's with the hat?
Fine.
That's a fierce.
Come in, we'll do it again. God. Symphony of Enchanted Lands by Rhapsody. Now known as Rhapsody of Fire. Rhapsody was founded in, 1993 by Alex Staropoli and Luca Turilli, who've both gone on to do side projects in the meantime. The main thing with Rhapsody is that they basically pioneered they call themselves Hollywood metal, but they're sort of more generally described as symphonic metal or fantasy metal. They encompass elements from the Baroque, film score, and sort of heavy metal genres. For their lyrics, they're basically medieval bards telling, an epic saga about heroes and demons and dragons, storming castles and, acquiring legendary swords for, to kill evil kings. Symphony of Enchanted Lands was the beginning of the Emerald Sword saga, which is still ongoing as far as I know, but every album that Rhapsody produces is a new installment in that saga. So this is UAS Season 2, Episode 2, and I'm Mike Gorrie, and at this... I first discovered Rhapsody about 9 years ago, and they basically became my transition from sort of stuff like Linkin Park and that kind of shit to both film score stuff and to metal.
I approve.
I feel like I've sort of gotten past them in both directions. Like it doesn't have that sort of, oh my god, this is amazing thing for me anymore, but it still has that nostalgia value.
I did like the album, but to me it sounded more like a soundtrack to something, as if it were, like, say, something that would get released alongside a film or a game rather than an actual standalone album.
Power metal does have that problem of, a lot of power metal does sound quite similar.
Yeah, like if you would take a complete stranger and say these are two bands and play,
they might struggle to
actually differentiate.
Find some difference. Yeah. By the way, yes, I did like the album.
That's my response to did I like it. Yes.
There are a couple of songs that I saw that remind me a bit of King Crimson. So I'm guessing that they could have taken influence from them. Heroes, Destiny, they had Crimson-esque elements to them. And let's see, Abyss, that song, at the end of that, the piano had a very sort of Chopin sound to it.
The Dark Tower of Abyss is probably my favorite out of this album, just because it's I tend to have a thing for the darker stuff.
Actually, Emerald Sword.
No. Emerald Sword.
Well, regardless of how you pronounce it, from a structural standpoint, it was the one that made the most sense to me.
I really liked a lot of the instrumental stuff in the Wisdom of the Kings, I believe, because that had a lot of really, really good guitar and keyboard solos, but especially any of the ones that featured a lot of the heavy violin stuff as well. I mean, I really like proper classical instruments, especially string. I love the strings, especially violin, in this kind of music.
I find like Wisdom of the Kings is the one that sort of gets stuck in people's heads.
And I agree with you, like the Dark Tower of the Abyss was up there, a very high one as well, because I liked the ones that went more heavily into the real Baroque sounding. I mean, there was one interlude which actually sounded like a particular Baroque piece that I know. I think possibly Chopin, but I'm not sure.
I think Dark Tower of Abyss was the weakest. Because...
Get out.
Now, hear me out. Hear me out. It is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Can you
6,
read Roman
7
numerals?
Oh, shut up. It is the.
You can't read Roman numerals.
It is the 8th song out of 10, right? It has a whole bunch of stuff going on. At the start, it sounds like you're coming into a new area, like you're looking over a hill and you see down the valley below you a new town. Then it goes into a Halloween vibe, and then it sounds like sort of a bustling night market. And this is all through a 7-minute song, that it just seems to be going places and there isn't really any consistent tone.
The beginning of, I believe it was Eternal Glory, I found a bit slow. And a couple of ones, any of the bits where it had the more sort of trumpet sound, because I could very clearly tell that that was a trumpet sound on a keyboard synthesizer and not real trumpets. A lot of them do sound kind of similar, and that is one point you can make about this genre that isn't, I wouldn't necessarily call it a bad point, but like, there are other genres where different songs sound more different.
Riding the Wings of Eternity, mostly because it's the only one I don't have any notes written down. I'm not the biggest fan of Baroque either. I do like a bit of classical, but yeah, much Baroque, very harpsichord.
I'm going to go with Eternal Glory, actually, just because it's what they've got. They've got a series of songs that are, you know, sort of the big sort of epic, triumphant, you know, sort of, okay, let's go nuts, tear this castle down kind of shit. Eternal Glory is kind of the third in a row. And so, like by that stage, the album is sort of getting to a point where, like, okay, this is all sounding the same. And they're trying to put it all at, you know, sort of, you know, all at a 10. But if everything's at 10, then suddenly everything's at 5. Whereas, yeah, sort of later on in the album, they sort of have a few more ups and downs. So I think having Eternal Glory at that point in the album is kind of a mistake. I feel like I kind of just answered that.
Yeah, I would say mostly, yeah. I mean, it didn't fall into the trap that a lot of albums I've listened to recently do, and especially quite a few metal albums, but kind of a lot of music in general. Even though they're on CDs or like digital format, they still kind of go with the whole A-side, B-side idea, that the songs later in the album are not as good as the early ones, which I think, to me, is not a good idea, because if I were to put together an album, I'd put good ones all the way through to keep people interested. And I feel like that's kind of what they've done with this, because, I mean, like, yeah, Dark Tower of Abyss is the third last, and we both agree that's a really good one.
Have it, maybe it's just pure instrumental. I think that would actually work a lot better for it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
In terms of the overall tone, it just seemed super inconsistent. Like, you had the great beginning, and then it kind of fell down a bit. And then it's like, oh, but wait, there's a bad guy. And now he's dead. And now something else has happened. And just sort of, it had this sort of up and down roller coaster that didn't really feel like an overarching adventure.
You didn't even really need the lyrics. Like, it would have flowed quite well if it was just an entirely instrumental album. A lot of the songs do kind of blend together a bit too well, where it's a bit kind of hard to have any sort of discernible difference. So, like, the harpsichord or the Chopin or the faux trumpets, they are what make certain things stand out.
However, you could also argue that that's a positive. Definitely.
In fact, can I borrow it?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've already listened to it, like, I don't know how many times. Not for a while.
Yes, on shuffle.
I don't hate the album, but I don't love the album. I'm kind of with it, so I don't know. If I heard it again, I wouldn't object to it, but I wouldn't actively seek to listen to it again.
So the guys sit down around the table, and the GM sits at the head of the table, and they each...
No, that's the other story, the one you were doing last night.
Oh.
That's private. Don't tell them.
Right. Yeah.
I might be offended.
What happens at the gaming table stays at the gaming table.
So this guy grabs an emerald sword with some of his mates, then they go and raise a whole lot of castles, then they rape and pillage some towns, and then they introduce several words to the English language. Oh wait, no, that's Viking.
In the Lord of the Rings movie, how I think it's at the end of the second one when you've got Sam, Frodo, and Gollum coming up from the rocks, and you see the Mount Doom in the distance. And then they just cut the movie there. It feels like they've almost done that, but in an album.
And time had come at the first light of dawn. We were already far from the green Elgard to find the Emerald Sword.
The way they say Emerald Sword is funny.
That's the whole point of power metal. Like, if someone from, I don't know, I say this and I can instantly prove myself wrong in this, but if someone from an English-speaking nation tries to make a power metal album like this, it will not be as popular because they can speak the language properly. part of the reason I love bands like this, and the Sonata Arctica, if you like this and you don't know Sonata Arctica, listen to them as well. Because A, they're good and they're fun and they sing about a lot of the similar sort of stuff, and B, the dude's accent is amazing.
What if someone from someone from an Anglophonic country were to do one of these in like Japanese?
Well, it's clearly trying to keep you in suspense for the next album.
Which, again, would work if you knew that there was a second one.
Well, obviously,
Because from what I can see,
they released
I
in
don't-
1998, so you don't know when the next one.
Yeah,
Well, you
and
know
also-
Y2K was going to hit, and you wouldn't get a second album.
And also, there's nothing on the CD visually to indicate that it is actually part of a series. So if you were to pick it up and say,
There's a guy riding a dragon with a sword.
yes, that's still
Sorry,
the
it's Svard.
But the point,
Quite clearly, there's going to be more based on this. Like,
No,
that is not an album cover that says we're getting this story done in one album.
I completely,
with only 10
I
tracks.
completely disagree.
There must be like Japanese or anywhere kind of metal bands that tell stories but based on anime as opposed to like Western mythology.
There's nothing to indicate that there's multiple parts to it.
But that doesn't really matter. Like, story can go over multiple albums, but it doesn't have to have the, like, this is album 1, this is album 2.
No, I'm not saying
etc.
that, but
Well,
if
what would
if
they
it's
do?
meant to be a continuing journey, there should be some way to show that on the actual.
But how they do that?
Just say, like, have a little 1 there or something.
Yeah, but then that would mean that the next album would have to have the same name, but be number 2, and they wouldn't necessarily want to do that.
No, they could just have like a styled writing there of note number 1, and then have the different name, but the style number 2.
That's not
so
how
you-
it works.
For the record, there is actually
Yeah,
a
it's-
Symphony of Enchanted Lands 2, and it's not the second one in the series, it's like the fourth. I just think it'd be kind of amazing to have like someone doing that in Japanese from an English-speaking country
Yeah.
with Anglophonic accents.
That would be brilliant, actually. I want to do that now.
Just to see what happens.
It's clearly an album not to be taken seriously, and yeah, because of that, I don't know, maybe it stops me from getting into it a bit more.
more than you want to.
Well, I've never been a fan of power metal. I've always found it a bit too rushed.
Cheesy.
Yeah, cheesy and rushed.
Given that we know that now that it's part of a series, I think that we should listen to the second one before we make any more judgments.
Like,
on
the second one is in this album too, or is in the second one in the series?
the second one in the series, which unfortunately is not actually the second one that was written if you were to go by the album covers, but
Or David doesn't like a logical album sequence. And
Like metal songs about like, I don't know.
No, seriously, let's go apply. Let's do it.
Alright, cool.
You got something in mind? Because
I could.
or count us in.
Alright, yeah, I'll just count us in. I'll work on that later. So.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Wait, like that's kind of more death metal. I thought we were going for like power metal here. I mean, you could kind of do like a power or like a melodic death metal thing if you want. Like,
Oh yeah, that's kind of what I was going for. But
Okay.
if you're really against the death metal thing, I don't mind. But
no, like if you can do the vocals, that's cool. Like we can always kind of branch. I mean, there's what I mean. You got like melodic death. This is like power metal, orchestral death
melodic
metal.
death,
Like yeah,
melodic death. That sounds cool to me.
and I mean you can go anywhere.
Melodic death.
Melodic. With that, that's the name. We got the name.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.